As part of a work trip, I had to be away from my partner of 3 years, X, for an entire week. I had informed her that I would be returning home on Sunday, but in reality, I had made arrangements to fly back a day earlier so that I could surprise her with a special date for her birthday, which would have otherwise been missed. It was a risk, but I was willing to take it to show her how much she meant to me. Yesterday morning, I took the time to message X and wish her a happy birthday. As part of our conversation, I asked her about her plans for the day. Much to my delight, she revealed that she was going to have a lovely wine and movies night with Y, a friend of hers who also resides in our apartment block. I couldn't help but express my excitement about returning home on Sunday. In response, X sweetly confessed that she couldn't wait for my return and expressed her love for me. However, what happened upon my arrival home was something I found difficult to write about. As I pulled up outside our building and entered the code gate, I noticed that there were no lights on up by our balcony. As I pulled up outside the building, I noticed that the lights in Y apartment were on, which led me to assume that X would be at her place. As I walked towards her apartment, I realized that I wouldn't have to enter the building as her place was on the ground level. Glancing through her window, I saw that she was sitting alone on her couch, engrossed in a TV show. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. Maybe X was out, I thought to myself. With that in mind, I decided to climb up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment. As I got closer to the door, I began to hear faint sounds of R&B music and moaning. My heart sank, and I knew something wasn't right. Even before I reached the door, I could tell that it wasn't locked, and the way it was positioned made it easy to push open. The thought of another man in our bed has always been my worst nightmare. To actually witness it play out right in front of me was nothing short of heart-wrenching. I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't even shed a tear. It all felt so surreal. Was this really happening? Was I dreaming? The sounds of their intimacy brought me back to reality. I knew I had to do something. With a heavy heart, I got up and walked out of the building towards the front gate. As I stepped out, Y, who had spotted me through the window, called out to me and waved, beckoning me to come over. Despite the pain and confusion that I was feeling, I mustered up the courage to approach her. I've always had a great rapport with Y, and in the past, she had expressed to X how much she valued our friendship. She had even gone as far as to confess to X that she found me attractive and had inquired if I had any single friends who hailed from New Zealand, my country of origin. From the moment I met Y, there had always been a certain level of chemistry between us, but I had never acted on it, keeping those thoughts buried deep within my mind. Despite the pain and confusion that I was feeling, I put on a brave face and walked into Y's apartment. She greeted me with a warm hug and inquired about my early arrival. I lied and told her that I had mixed up the dates and thought she was supposed to be having birthday drinks with X. However, she seemed confused and told me that X had mentioned going out for drinks with some of our gym friends. I was taken aback by this revelation, and it only added to my already overwhelming emotions. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer and burst out crying. It felt like forever, and Y grew increasingly worried. She kept asking me what was wrong, if something had happened to me, and so on. My tongue felt heavy, and I struggled to find the right words to express what I had just witnessed. Finally, I blurted out the truth, that I had caught X and AP in our bed. Y's face turned ghostly white, and she immediately hugged me, crying alongside me. She knew that I was a prankster, but she could tell that this was no joke. Out of sheer frustration, I began to speak, saying that I didn't know what to do, that they could be up there all night, and that this was my worst nightmare come true. Prior to this incident, we had no significant issues in our relationship, apart from X's lack of interest in intimacy, which only occurred once every 6 weeks. In hindsight, it's amazing that I managed to sustain a 3-year relationship with her. As I struggled to come to terms with what I had just witnessed, Y tried to lighten the mood by laughing through her tears. She revealed that she had been single for a long time and hadn't had intimacy in ages. We both laughed at her joke, and for a moment, the weight of the situation seemed to lift. I hugged her tightly, grateful for her presence in my life. I asked her if I could stay the night at her place since I had nowhere else to go, and she agreed. That night I slept on her couch, and I am still here a day later, trying to make sense of what happened with X. I watched AP leave in the morning and watched with tears in my eyes as he returned this evening. It is currently within my plans to be back home tomorrow afternoon. Today has gone by without any communication between X and I. However, it seems that X has also not reached out to me. To be completely candid, my sole source of comfort at the moment is with Y. The question that lingers now is, how do I handle my situation with X? Should I make my way up to where she is and interrupt her, or perhaps, should I opt for a phone call as a means of communication? Update. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to each and every individual who has taken the time to share their views, opinions, and advice. I am still attempting to keep up with reading all of the comments, as I find each one to be valuable. I am especially appreciative of those who have suggested that I should have had a backbone or a spine in my previous situation. If I'm being completely honest, I would have said the same thing to someone else in a similar predicament. However, experiencing infidelity for the first time has allowed me to understand that it's much easier to judge until it actually happens to you. Before I delve into what has occurred today, I would like to address a few questions. As for me, I am the sole proprietor of my own business, and I manage it from end to end without any assistance. On average, I travel approximately 3 times a year to visit production facilities and conduct quality checks for my product. In terms of my physical appearance, I stand at 6 feet and 6 inches tall, weighing in at 124 kilograms. I am an avid rugby player and have also participated in boxing, which has provided me with the skills to defend myself if necessary. However, I do not go around boasting about my abilities or using them to intimidate others. In comparison to that despicable individual, I tower over him in every aspect. As for my financial situation, I am fortunate enough to earn a very comfortable living, as does X. Therefore, in the event of a split, neither of us would suffer from financial ruin. It is also worth noting that we are not married. After numerous tears have been shed, I've come to the realization that this situation was, in fact, a blessing in disguise. It has become exceedingly clear to me what my next course of action should be, and that is to secure an apartment for myself. Currently, we share the responsibility of paying all bills 50-50, and we have approximately 4 months and 1 week remaining on our year-long lease, which bears both of our names. Despite the fact that we had been actively searching for a home to purchase, I now understand that I have, in fact, dodged a bullet. When it comes to Y, I cannot help but admire her in every aspect. Not only does her personality radiate kindness and compassion, but she is also strikingly beautiful. It truly baffles me how someone like her has remained single for so long, and what's more, according to X, she has not been intimate with anyone for over 3 years. Throughout this entire ordeal, Y has remained steadfastly by my side, never uttering a cruel word about X. She fully comprehends that X's actions were unacceptable, and that it does not involve her in any way. However, Y has mentioned that once X inevitably accepts responsibility for her actions, she will likely end their friendship. During this trying time, Y has been nothing but a source of unwavering support, never once attempting to use me as a rebound or take advantage of my vulnerability. Her actions alone are a testament to the kind of person she is. In contrast, X works at a hospital and is undoubtedly attractive and pleasant, but can often be quite self-centered. Reflecting back on our relationship, it seems that we were nothing more than friends. We have only ever engaged in protected sexual intercourse, as X does not wish to become pregnant or use any sort of contraceptive medication, and even then, it was an infrequent occurrence. I suppose I simply accepted the situation and grew too comfortable with the relationship being what it was. I am currently attempting to come to terms with the fact that X never displayed any signs of infidelity. Although I am aware that I am not without fault, I have always treated her with kindness and respect, cooking for her and helping out around the house whenever I could. We went on frequent dates, and I made a conscious effort to express my love for her, despite often receiving little in return. In light of recent events, I now question why, if she no longer desired to be with me, she remained in the relationship for such an extended period of time. My current plan involves calling X this morning to inform her that my flight has been rescheduled to an earlier time and asking if she could pick me up from the airport accordingly. The airport is located approximately 40 minutes away from our home, and I intend to use this time to pack all of my belongings and rush them to my car. Y has generously offered to allow me to store some of my possessions in her spare room. Once X realizes that my belongings are missing, I anticipate that she will attempt to reach out to me via phone calls, messages, and other forms of communication. At that point, I plan to simply respond with a photograph of the two of them in bed together. Upon perusing the comments, I came to the conclusion that the harshest penalty for her would be to leave her without any form of resolution. It was then that I decided to have a heart-to-heart with the property manager, outlining the intricacies of my current situation, and subsequently relocate to a friend's abode until I could secure a new residence. While X could undoubtedly cover the rent, I could not bear to remain in such close proximity to her. Although I have the option to reside with Y, it would be imprudent to do so, as I am unwilling to jeopardize our friendship in any way, shape, or form, even though it is inevitable that Y and I will end up together. In the wee hours of the morning, before the sun had even begun to peek over the horizon, I crept out of my slumber and gingerly turned the doorknob, being mindful not to make a sound. As I peered into the room, my heart raced with anticipation. Thankfully, my subjects were sound asleep, blissfully unaware of my presence. With a steady hand, I aimed my camera and snapped a photo of them in their peaceful slumber. However, as I gazed at the image I had captured, a strange feeling washed over me. It was as if I violated their privacy, even though all my relationships were violated in response. My sadness had dissipated, replaced instead by a seething anger and sense of betrayal. It was then that my eyes fell upon his shoes, carelessly strewn on the floor next to my own, much larger pairs. A devious idea formed in my mind, and I quickly snapped a photo of them, intending to use it as ammunition in my quest for justice. After contemplation, I deduced that a more subtle approach would be best in handling the delicate situation at hand. I knew that she was likely to deny any wrongdoing until I presented her with the damning photo of her in bed with another man. With this in mind, I made my way back down to Y and bided my time for an hour or so, ensuring that X would be up and about. Despite my repeated attempts to reach her by phone, my calls went unanswered, not once but twice. My companion and I exchanged knowing glances, both of us acutely aware of what was transpiring behind closed doors. A seemingly interminable half-hour later, she finally returned my call, her voice betraying no hint of guilt or wrongdoing. It was as if everything was perfectly normal, but I knew better. In my usual tone, I informed her that my flight was departing 2 hours earlier than expected and requested if she could pick me up at 1 p.m. She replied positively and expressed her love for me. She also mentioned that she was having breakfast with her parents, who sent their regards to me. It's worth noting that her parents hold me in high regard, and they might be upset about my sudden change of plans. After that, I took some time to rest and plan what I needed to pack from the apartment. Apart from a handful of clothing items and some appliances, I had already packed most of my belongings in anticipation of moving into a new house. At around noon, I noticed X heading towards the parking lot, and I waited a few minutes before moving my car and heading upstairs. Upon entering the apartment, I detected the scent of air freshener and observed new bed sheets and covers. Additionally, all the dishes had been washed. It was evident that X had gone to great lengths to conceal any evidence of anyone else's presence in the apartment. In just 10 minutes, I managed to collect all my belongings. If I missed anything, it was probably insignificant. Although it felt strange to say goodbye to my once-called home, I felt empowered. X texted me inquiring about my whereabouts as she was waiting at the arrivals area. I responded, informing her of a delay and that I would Uber home instead. A little later, I received a flurry of missed calls and messages, inquiring about my belongings and if something had gone wrong. My heart raced as I sent the photo of the shoes, stating that they were not my size. I was outraged when she had the nerve to reply, claiming they belonged to her brother, who picked her up to visit her parents. I had predicted that she would try to pull something like this, and I didn't even want to entertain the conversation. However, I knew she was cornered, so I sent her a picture of her and AP lying in bed and left it at that. Surprisingly, she didn't even attempt to call me. I was anticipating a barrage of calls and texts, but instead that was me walking away from her. I could have easily exposed her by confronting them or calling her out, but instead I wanted her to know that I was aware of her deceitful actions and that she would never be able to justify or explain them. I refuse to besmirch her reputation as it goes against my principles, and I have no intention of ruining her life. She will have to live with her actions for eternity, although I doubt she has a conscience. I departed wisely, knowing that X would visit her soon, and met my friends nearby to gather today's recap to share with all of you. Y has been a great support during this difficult time, and I know she will soon end her friendship with X. I'm doing well and focusing on the future. Although it was painful at first, I'm grateful that I discovered the truth before we bought a house. I've notified the property manager via email that X will be taking over the rent until the lease ends and that she can keep the bond. I believe the real pain for X will come when Y and I start our inevitable relationship.